champion. Strickland pouring those jabs out there, left-handed jabs right to the head. Bang. The champ stinging the slower challenger, jabs at will. In fact, it just looks like...
Every time we do these podcasts on Zoom, whether it's like the roadcast or I'm doing something like for an interview, there's always like a point where I'm setting up the camera and like I have to look directly at it to see if the shot looks right. And then like I always feel like Walter White in the first scene of Breaking Bad when he's just looking, or not the first, it's when he's sitting on the bed recording the one like confession and he's like, "My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negroes
Yeah.
Road." Like just staring directly at the camera at myself. It just it looks funny. But yeah, man, we got plenty to talk about here. The snow is hit once again, man. I'm so tired of this. That's why we're on Zoom today for anybody who's wondering. And like it's crazy. Even you being like right down the street, it would still be like kind of a pain in the ass to walk over here. But how's it going for you shoveling today to start off the show?
I haven't started doing that yet. I'm doing this first, so
Gotcha. So you
that'll
just have
come
the rest of
soon.
your family picking up after you. I see how it is. Bum. No, I'm
Yeah,
messing around.
yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, even though we're on
They
Zoom,
will they'll work around her ambush in the
of
business.
course. But dude, you know where it wasn't snowing though? Houston. At least I don't think it was. But we have plenty to talk about, whether it's just about like the fight card or even more stories just like stemming from that, just other stuff from the weekend. It was funny. I was watching the card in my room and then our friend Brooke texted me and he texted me, "Houston, we have a problem." And I was forgot for a moment that the Knicks were playing the Rockets in New York. And so like my first thought was Euros Medic. And I'm like, so I texted him back. I just said to him, "Oh yeah, well, that's Euros Medic. That's his name." And, and Brooke was probably thinking when he first saw the notification, he's like, "What is this guy talking about?" And then yeah, we cleared that one up pretty fast. But dude, this card kind of mid to start off, but the main card I thought was pretty interesting. But the main event is obviously the big story about the card and everything surrounding that. So that's where we ultimately have to start. Um, for those of you guys who didn't see it though, Sean Strickland defeats Anthony Fluffy Rodriguez in just brutal fashion. Probably the best Strickland has ever looked. Maybe outside of the Adesanya fight, but then again, he didn't finish Adesanya, so there's that. But when it comes to this fight, man, I like Sean Strickland always fights in a pretty similar way, but in my opinion, in this fight, he did one thing a lot better than he has done for the majority of his career, and that's like kind of staying in range when he moves out of the way because he has really good head movement and he's very elusive. But a lot of the times when he gets out of the way of punches, he's kind of like getting himself out of range, and then he feels more comfortable kind of like picking you apart from the outside. But in this fight, I thought he did a really good job at kind of staying in range and landing some counters, along with, the signature jab and everything else that he's good at, the jabs and teeps. Except this time he didn't need 25 minutes, he only needed about like 12. But this was a really impressive performance by Strickland. What did you think of it?
Um, well, I'm gonna talk more about the fight itself more than probably the same amount as we can say because I think it's just more about what sh what Sean Strickland's gonna do next and how how he's gonna be able to win whatever his next fight might be. And I don't think the way he won this fight, actually, I know the way he won this fight is not gonna be how he wins. If he fights Khamzat Chimaev, it's not gonna be how he beats Khamzat Chimaev. Because what I was let down about this fight was how much it just felt like which is fine. I mean, Muay Thai is awesome, but it just felt like a straight Muay Thai match and I'm trying to see Anthony Anthony Hernandez test Sean Strickland with with in terms of I know Sean Strickland can stuff takedowns, but we didn't that's not like he had to here. It's not like there was uh any um any ground game to take away and kind of give Anthony Hernandez credit for, and he was just made uncomfortable the entire fight, and it gets to a point where um the as great of a base that Anthony Hernandez has with his grappling, um, he's got to let the hands fly more. He's got to be able to land and make it uncomfortable for the guy in front of him instead of fighting on the back foot the pretty much the entire fight. That's what I was disappointed of because I mean you get the main event spot too, and I think a lot of people are aware that, even if he doesn't submit Sean Strickland, he's probably going to fight to a decision. And it's also disappointing to see just this. I think he crumbled. I don't think like Sean Strickland. I don't think he wanted to really be there anymore with Sean Strickland and how much of the pace that Sean Strickland was putting onto him. And like I get it, but I think it's just a bad outlook for Anthony Hernandez going forward because I don't think he's going to be able to really get to those heights that who the guy just beat him, Sean Strickland has gotten to already, and what it's going to take to beat guys in the top five of this
Yeah.
division.
And we've talked about that too, like on and off the pod before. Like when you see people on a title run and they go on like that large of a win streak and then they kind of lose right before that like big title eliminator pretty much, it's hard to get back there again because like there's so much mental energy, I think, to go on a run like that. And then, to be in a big fight like that, main event, like you said, against Strickland, former champion. Um, it was disappointing. I will say this though, like I think that a lot of that was caused by Strickland more than Fluffy. Because I don't think Fluffy was really able to get into Strickland's range at all to even shoot for a takedown. But I do agree with you on the Hamzat point because I don't think that we learned much. Like, obviously, we've learned that Strickland can keep someone off of him, but Fluffy's not really explosive like Hamzat is. That's kind of the difference between their grappling styles. So it's like, I guess we've seen that Sean can beat a grappler, but like I said, Fluffy's not the same type of grappler as Hamzat, not even remotely, honestly. So I still want to see like what Strickland's style would look like against an explosive takedown guy like Hamzat. And I don't think that this fight proved enough. I think that this fight might get him a title fight, but I'm not sure if it proves that he can beat Hamzat, although he thinks he can. But I don't blame him for thinking that, of course. But yeah, so I sort of agree with you. I agree with you that this fight didn't prove much in terms of Strickland maybe beating Hamzat in the future, but it was definitely a good win over like a legit contender. Like I think he made Fluffy look as bad as he looked because Fluffy couldn't get past that jab. I mean, he had no head movement. He was just getting lit up with that. But maybe if all he really had to do is kind of have some movement, like that Mike Tyson moving his head, and maybe he would have been able to get to a leg, but it's just like you said, kind of a lack of urgency. And then, either way, like it's hard to kind of shoot for takedowns when you're just getting jabbed every couple of seconds. And yeah, he just kind of got beat up in there by the end of it. And Strickland's so accurate too. That's the other thing. Like he's so good at like making the most out of those exchanges on the inside, whether it's like landing knees, elbows, just good jabs on the outside, leg kicks, body kicks. Like he does know how to mix it up on the feet, and I think he's pretty smart for like, you know, the middleweight division. Like I'm not sure if a lot of those guys have the fight IQ that Strickland has. But what do you think it gets him a title fight though? Because there's still Imavov out there too. And now Dana did also say that Hamzat, he doesn't want to see Hamzat move up yet, which I'm very happy about as we can get into. But first, before that, do you think that Hamza or Strickland gets a title fight off of this?
Mm, yeah, because I mean, um, so for instance, where where you think Sean Strickland's gonna, what his ranking is gonna be after tomorrow?
Well, right now, well, he was three going into this, and then I want to say he has Imavov above him, and yeah, Imavov and DDP. So. I mean, obviously, Dricus isn't getting another title shot. It's Imavov that's the one that you're not really sure about. And if you remember, they already fought, and Strickland got that win, which is kind of aged well for him getting that win. So like it is. I'll say this. I still personally want to see Imavov fight Hamzat first, although I don't think it goes much differently than a fight with Strickland would go. But at the same time, that win over Imavov should mean something in Strickland's favor. And like the other thing to note too is that the UFC likes somebody who can promote themselves, although some people would argue that he does it in all the wrong ways. But, he creates headlines, people care about his fights, and I would say they probably care more about Strickland fights than they do Imavov fights. And that's kind of the thing that most MMA fans tend to overlook is the business aspect of it. And like right now, there's not a lot of Americans at the top for the UFC, and it seems like they're kind of trying to trend in that direction. So I could definitely see Strickland jumping Imavov for the shot, even though he's obviously had a much more recent
Well,
opportunity at it.
what I think is that Nasruddin Imavov's probably been training, like trying to get in shape and ready for a Hamza Chimaev fight in the near future, whereas Sean Strickland just got out of a camp with a much different fighter on the sphere, and he beat him handily. But in terms of a turnaround, I don't how maybe 6 months or 5 months, 4 months. It could be pretty
But he's been
soon for
pretty active in
Sean
his
Strickland.
career. He took the year off coming into this fight, but like for the most, I mean, remember what was it, 2021 or 2022? He fought like four times, I think, in the Apex. Like he is somebody who likes to stay active, but then again, like as you get closer to the top of the division, obviously it's a lot harder. But I don't know. I mean, it's intriguing. I mean, the ultimate reality of this is that Hamzat just needs to fight. Like, we've delayed his first title defense so long at this point, and I think that at this point, whether it's Strickland or Imavov, we need to just see him in the cage. Like, I'm so tired of hearing Hamzat talk about moving up to 205 when there's still like plenty of work to be done at 185. Because let's not forget, he hasn't fought a lot of the top contenders at the weight class. They kind of fast tracked him up. And part of that fast track was at welterweight. So that's the other thing. Like I'm getting tired of hearing all these fighters who win belts and then immediately want to move up weight class. It's like take care of your division before you want to move up and get double champ status. Like in my opinion, that's reserved for like the biggest stars in the sport or people who've cleaned out their divisions. And I don't think Hamzat has really done either of those things yet. And he's a great fighter, obviously. Like I still think he beats probably everybody in that middleweight division, but like you haven't yet. So like you have to do it. That's kind of how I feel about it. So I mean, I agree with you. It depends on the turnaround too, because like let's say they get a Hamzat fight booked before the White House card or right after, then yeah, it would probably make sense for Imavov to get the shot first just because Strickland just fought. But if Hamzat stays as inactive as he's been, then it gets a little murky, you know what I mean? And it's not unlike the UFC to skip over certain contenders for title shots, that's for sure, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, yeah. So Sean Strickland got a as about as convincing of a win you could get in terms of whether or not he's gonna get his next fight's gonna be a for the championship. So
I
That's
think
all
if it
you
was
could.
a decision, it would have been a little more murky. But like the fact that he got a really good finish over a guy who's on that big of a win streak, and like you know this, I've been saying that I thought Fluffy was the best matchup to beat someone like Hamza, and then Strickland kind of takes all that momentum for himself, and then like I said, he keeps himself in the headlines too, which is valuable one way or another. Um, because you know the UFC they don't really care if somebody hates you as long as you bring in the numbers. And like that's kind of another thing that I wanted to get into too, because this has been, you know, we were talking about it off air for a bit, and I honestly didn't even think that it would come up on the show. But now, because of the post fight, I kind of want to talk about it a little bit because it brings up an interesting conversation. But like, you know, earlier in the fight week, obviously Sean Strickland said a lot of crazy stuff during media day, you know, about Bad Bunny, a bunch of slurs about him, Hamzat. And, you know, it's to be expected with Sean Strickland at this point, obviously. But then after the fight, he sits there for the post-fight press conference. And then, you know, he's mid-rant about Jim West grooming Aspen Ladd. And then he's also, you know, calling Hamzat a goat fucker and all this stuff, like, you know, to put it bluntly. And then the UFC PR team cut his mic and cut the interview short. And so, like, you know, that's been the big debate. Obviously, a lot of MMA fans think that the UFC's soft. They should let him say whatever he wants, no matter how stupid what he says is, to, you know, again, put it bluntly. And I know everybody's not going to agree with me on that one, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really care. I just think what's right is right. You know what I mean? And like, there's certain things that that guy says sometimes. It's like, and I'll say this too. I think with all that's going on in America right now, with like, you know, stuff with kids, it's it's kind of stupid that they chose that comment to cut his mic over. Like I get that it could probably be like murky legal wise because, you know, they could get sued for him saying that if it's not true. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think if they were going to step in and cut Sean Strickland's mic, they should have either done it a lot sooner or they shouldn't have done it at all. Because to act like this is the worst thing that Sean Strickland's ever said and like that's the line you don't want him to cross, it just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And it just seems like too little too late because you have everybody in like the mainstream world kind of, you know, ragging on the UFC, ragging on Paramount for letting Strickland kind of get away with the media day comments, and then you cut him off way after the fact. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that you should let people speak and let them expose how dumb they are by just letting them talk. But obviously, there's a lot of people who would say just cut the mic. But I'm just curious what you kind of think of the whole situation with Strickland. And I guess like how would how would you want that handled if you were kind of making those decisions? Do you think that they've done a good job, bad job, somewhere in the middle?
No, I just have a different um perspective kind of than you have on it. I don't think it was I don't think it was necessarily the grooming statement that crossed the line. I think it was what it was is so since they have this whole new deal and all this new audience and stuff and the fights are so much more accessible now than ever. They kind of see it as we're gonna try to preserve the what made the UFC model what it is and as as barbaric of a sport as it already is. So we were kind of talking about it when we were doing the BKFC roadcast in terms of the press conference and the questions that and some of the fans and stuff that were being asked of the fighters. And well, my point was, I think words can really only hurt so much when these people are going to, you know, literally bust each other's face open. And who knows what comes out of that? Like the most gruesome kind of fight you could watch. And kind of the same like these guys, it's what we don't see on camera in terms of their training regimen and stuff. I think they're already so mentally fortified that, you know, they're kind of not that they're prepared for everything, but they're also professionals too, and they have agents and stuff and managers and PR that trains them that, hey, like you gotta, stay level-headed. So Sean Strickland is an anomaly in the sense that he's um he's just he's just in a I don't even he's just probably just in the wrong era. If this was early UFC, anything would really go and he would be absolutely thriving. Um, but I, th- what it is they're trying to let him like we're gonna just keep letting him talk because we don't want to alter. We're not trying. We bought the UFC. Paramount bought the UFC for billions of dollars already for a reason. They're not going to try to change every little thing of it. So they're going to let him talk. And the difference between what happened during the week before the fight was uh he was being asked about the stuff he was talking about.
I'm I'm glad
Um,
you said that because I do agree with you on that part of it. Like, while the stuff that Sean Strickland says is like absolutely reprehensible and kind of just stupid, for lack of a better word, the media asking him questions like, "What did you think of Bad Bunny during the Super Bowl?" It's like, what do you think a guy like Sean Strickland is going to say back to that? Like, it's the definition of clip farming. And the fact that it's, professional media that are going there and asking these questions, like, what does that have to do with the fight? Like, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're just trying to get him to say something crazy so they can get something that has a lot of clicks. And then some of those people, not all of them, but some of those people are the same ones who are bashing him for saying those things. But it's like, you know what you're getting with that guy. And that doesn't excuse the things that he says. I mean, Sean Strickland says stuff that's racist, homophobic, all this other bad stuff. But if the media is trying to get it out of him, that's also kind of on them, in my opinion. And, but the thing is, too, a lot of the question now also is like, well, what is the UFC like? Do they have a responsibility to do something about that? I personally, I don't really think that. There, like, again, there's some people who would probably say, yeah, cut his mic if he's saying something controversial. Like, it's not good. Don't let those ideas get airtime. But I'm truly of the the thought process that if someone has a dumb opinion or just an opinion that you don't agree with, let them say it. And if it's dumb enough, they'll expose themselves. And I think most normal people probably don't feel the way that Sean Strickland feels, even if they're entertained by it. Like, they probably don't. Like, I personally, it's bad, but like, who's he really hurting? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just an interesting topic, and like, I couldn't believe they actually cut his mic. Like I said, nothing in the UFC's history has made me think that that would ever come, especially at that point. But I also think that there was probably like a legal aspect to it, because like I said, you're kind of accusing a guy of a crime, and it's like broadcasted to thousands, if not millions of people. And so that's got to be a problem for Paramount in the UFC, probably like, just like I said, legally speaking. So I feel like that might have had something to do with it, but I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle more situations like that in the future, because it's not like Strickland's the only one who says crazy shit from time to time. I mean, who knows when Colby's gonna fight again? Even Conor McGregor sometimes says some wacky stuff, but I don't know. It'll be something interesting to keep an eye on, because I feel like this was the first time that we've really seen the UFC kind of do something like that in a while. Outside of the Bryce Mitchell situation, there really hasn't been very much of that. Um, but who knows? Because Paramount, they're not a very like liberal network. You know what I mean? So that's the other reason why I was kind of shocked by it. If it was like ESPN, I would have been more like, all right, I kind of could see that coming. But Paramount, I don't know. That was unexpected, but I guess we'll see kind of how the landscape shifts in the future. But I don't want to take
well,
away from his win that much, but it was an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on. But at the end of the day, Sean Strickland gets the dub, really impressive dub at that. And who knows, he might get the next title shot. But if not, I'd be curious to see what they end up doing with him next. But we have a couple of other fights that I kind of want to get into with this card, and one of them is the co-main because I've been so into watching Euros Medic fight for such a long time now. Like I remember when he was on the Contender Series, he was awesome back then. He's all excitement. He's not a guy that like is always gonna win, but he's definitely looked his best lately on this welterweight run that he's had, and knocking out Jeff Neal cold in the way that he did has definitely done a lot for him, and obviously gets him a number by his name the next time the rankings change. And called out Leon Edwards, wants to fight him in Serbia because the UFC is rumored to be going there sometime in May or June. Um, yeah, man. What did you think of Euros Medic versus Jeff Neal? I was looking forward to this fight before the card. I was picking this as fight of the night and then ended up being knockout of the night instead.
Mm. Yeah, I I mean before I think with Euros Medic he kind of he already had all this promise, just what his finish rate already is, and even if this went to a decision and he lost, I don't think I think it would have been okay. I think he would have gotten into the top 15 sooner rather than later anyways. Um, the thing is here is that it's just for Jeff. I think just Jeff Neal needed Neal needed this win like way more, and right after because coming off the Carlos Protest loss, which was also a knockout as bad as that was, uh, it was really all it was if he can at least give Euros Medic something to worry about, then you know you just kind of live with the result. This is the result that I don't think is really difficult to live with because uh it was I don't he just didn't see that left hand coming at all, and he got put out in the first minute and a half of the fight, and it's just unfortunate. Like I feel bad for the dude, but hey, that's just what it is at this point. Because now I think you're uh if you're ranked welterweight watching Eurosmatic now, you're kind of like now you're definitely paying attention to him, and I think he could easily just main event one of these any of these fight night cards that might be coming up that they might want. So it's pretty good.
Well, I think
And
they are going to Serbia in like around Memorial Day, like here. Basically, like I want to say May, but maybe June. I know it's just early, kind of like when it's getting warmer out here. And obviously Euros Medic is from Serbia, so like that would be a shoo-in for a main event. And he called out Leon Edwards, so that could be a really interesting fight. Obviously, they're on two different trajectories, but at the same time, Euros Medic isn't he is a flawed fighter. So it is a fight that Leon could see as winnable, but at the same time, it also is a pretty big risk because then if you lose, who knows what's going to happen. But I do think that Euros Medic versus Leon Edwards would be a really interesting fight for both the guys. Um, but like, yeah, the fight itself, I guess there's not really too much to talk about. I mean, Euros Medic, he's, I don't think he's ever been to decision in his entire career. So, like he's quite literally the type of fighter. He's either knocking you out or he's getting knocked out. And now that guy has a number next to his name. So I do think it would be appealing to most welterweights to maybe give him an opportunity because it could really go one of two ways for you. You could either win spectacularly or you're going to lose spectacularly, but that's a better chance than you're going to have against most of the top welterweights nowadays who are really all around in every single way. So yeah, I was impressed by Medic. I think that Jeff Neal might just be getting a little old, if I'm being honest. If he's not 40 already, he's close to it. So it was a tough night for him, especially at home
yeah,
in Texas.
well, yeah. So I don't even see Jeff Neal get knocked out anymore. So I don't know
Yeah.
what they're gonna do with him, but
I mean, he'll put on exciting fights, but it's just a matter of, next fight you put him in has to probably be against someone who's unranked. And it's like, if that person beats him, well, I mean, where do you go from there? I feel bad for the guy, I really do, because he's a good fighter. But he's dealt with some stuff. I don't know if you heard him. He was talking about he's been dealing with like alcohol problems and I think prescription stuff too. So kind of a rough thing, but at least he's overcome that. So hopefully this doesn't drag him down too much because he's a good fighter. Seems like a good dude too. Um, at least nowadays. So yeah, but not to take away from Uros Medic though, because that was just spectacular. I don't know if anyone thought that knockout was going to look quite like that. Um, but outside of that, I mean, there were some other moments on this card that were pretty interesting. None that I want to get into a crazy amount, but just some good performances. I mean, Melky Costa hitting Dan Ige with that spinning back kick was pretty wild. I think he's the first person to ever finish Dan Ige, which is, I mean, that's a feather in the cap, honestly. I'm really intrigued to see kind of what comes up for him next at featherweight because I think he's a guy who could make a little bit of a run there. I think it'll be interesting to see how he does against some of the good grapplers towards the top of that division, but on the feet, he's a massive problem. But then, besides that, Sergey Spivak, his striking looked better than ever against Ante Delija. And this, man. I've been giving the heavyweight division a lot of crap lately. And I'll say this, Sergey Spivak versus Ante Delija might not have been the best fight in the world, but at least Sergey Spivak is improving. He looks a lot better than he did when he first got into the UFC. When he first got into the UFC, he was only a grappler, and now he seems to be rounding out his game a lot better. His jab looked really good in this fight. Uh, so I'll say this to credit the heavyweight division a little bit. Good on Sergey Spivak for getting it done and looking impressive on the feet. But then the only other, well, actually, there was a fight of the year contender that ended the prelims too. Nojukwani versus Leal. So, maybe Gaethje versus Patty has some competition, although I'd still give it to that one. But the last fight I kind of wanted to talk about too was Jacoby Smith versus Josiah Harrell. That was a fight that I was intrigued by because you got two undefeated prospects fighting early in their careers. And then Jacoby Smith, I mean, that finish that he had, gets taken down. The reversal that he hit has to be one of the most athletic moves I've seen in MMA in a long time. Basically, kind of doing a handstand to get back in top position and then into side control, and then just immediately knocks out Harrell with the first couple of punches that he throws. I mean, that dude is going to be a problem. I think people should keep their eye on him. Um, but yeah, any of those fights kind of stick out to you more than the others? I don't want to like just completely skate past them.
mm, no, I think the Jacoby Smith finish is what I'm most in line with because I think he'll be doing that to ranked welterweights at some point sooner rather than later. So I think he's that good. Um, Other than that, yeah, I think Carlo, I think with Chidi and Joe Kawano, I think he's got a good chin and he's very tough. I think I think he embraces just all 15 minutes and he wants to put on as much damage as he can. It's just, I think he throws one too many leg kicks and Carlos Leal is a bomber with his hands. So I thought that was fun too. Other than that, then yeah, you had spectacular finishes and stuff. My thing about this card was I thought it was like a I think it was a good card in terms of matchups. It's just that a lot of these matchups resulted in not that competitive of a fight. I think you had at least three fights on the main card that weren't that all that competitive, and it results in finishes, which is always good, but you kind of you feel for the guys that not even that you feel for the guys that lost, but you expect more from the guys that lost. And for the winners, there's still so much more to see too. So, um, yeah, it was a middling, it was an indifferent kind of card.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah.
Yeah. I thought the prelims were kind of mid for the most part, to be honest. There was a good couple of
Well,
fights here and there.
Even Michelle Pereira versus Zachary Reese to open the card had,
Yeah. That fight.
the two questionable groin shots, whether here or there, and you had the eye poke, a bunch of stoppages, and
None of which
just
should have been, by the way. I
yeah,
don't like Pereira. I really don't. I
questionable decision at the end too. Like,
yeah, yeah, I don't know. The reason why I didn't really even put that fight in the outline is because, like, in all honesty, I just don't really give a shit about the result. Like, I think Pereira is he's one of those guys who kind of tries to game the rules a bit, and I don't like fighters like that, if I'm being honest. And he's also not really that good in the grand scheme of things. Like, he's not going to make a run at welterweight. I would put a lot on that. And like, he's exciting, don't get me wrong, but he always finds himself in some sort of dumb controversy. And in this fight, I mean, both of those groin shots weren't groin shots. The one kicked him in the thigh, and then the other one was a clean body shot, in my opinion. And then the eye poke was a little bit closer, but that finger didn't go in that eye, man. Like, come on. This is a guy who's constantly showed that he hasn't improved his cardio whatsoever. He just goes in there trying to get a finish in an exciting way, and that's not a bad thing. But, if you're going to do that, at least preserve your gas tank for 15 minutes and don't just look for every way out possible, because I think that that's the way that he fights. I've always had just a bad opinion of him. Like, even way back when I remember when he fought Diego Sanchez in New Mexico and he was doing all the flips and all that stupid stuff. And then I think he kneed him when he was on the ground, and then he loses that fight because he hits Diego with an illegal strike. Like, for me, like, he's just not worth the constant bullshit that they get with him, in my opinion. That's why, like, every time he fights, I honestly, like, don't even care about his fights or even talking about him. But yeah, man, I kind of agree with you. I mean, honestly, I'm more disappointed for Reese because, like, that was a fight that he could have won, but your opponent is actually doing well and then is trying to get out of the fight in any way possible, which is just crazy. I don't know, man. That might be a bit harsh, but I've just felt this way about Pereira for a long time, and you kind of unlocked it with that one. Because yeah, this fight, when I was watching it, like, it was one of those fights where every single time he would do something that would get the fight stopped, I'm like, really? I'm like, now I gotta sit here for another 3 minutes just because you have to fake a nut shot, fake an eye poke. Like, I can't stand that type of stuff, man. I really can't. So, but yeah, man, this card overall, not too bad. I mean, there were some moments on it. I think the main event was fun. I enjoyed
well,
that, watching Strickland get
I
the
think
win.
on the I think on the prelims they had a fighter make his debut in the welterweight division who I think is going to be on main cards like very soon as UFC career, like once he starts finishing his opponents too. But John Paul Labazian, he fought Phil Rowe on the prelims, and I thought that guy was pretty exciting and promising. Like, I just think I feel like he kind of like he fights like a flyweight at the welterweight division, which is like fascinating to me. I just think he's super quick and active with his hands. I don't know about his ground game, but that didn't
Well,
really have to. I think
Rowe's
Phil
pretty
Rowe's a
good
guy who like
too. He's a
he
good
gets like
grappler too. That's
as
the
the
other thing.
fight Phil Rowe gets like better as the fight goes on. But Della Bosnia looked like super poised and just composed and didn't let the moment get too big for him. So he should have been. I think Phil Rowe landed enough strikes that and then Texas judging too is just
Oh, dude,
questionable.
we've talked about that. I feel like every single time they've gone there, there's a questionable card. I mean, my mind
Because
always goes back to Jones versus Reyes. That's one of the crazier decisions I've seen in a while. But
yeah, I think this kid should have gotten the unanimous decision, but somehow the judge gave Phil Rowe 29-28, and you got Bosnian got the win, so that was good. But it's like getting welcome to UFC, where welcome to UFC's judging, where even when you win, you still get robbed somehow.
Yeah, at least he still gets the show money and the win money. It would have been rough if he lost, though, that's for sure. But Roe's good, man. So getting a win over him, that's a good sign for his future. But yeah, man, decent card overall. Just a couple of other stories to talk about before we dip here. One of them, the first one I wanted to get your opinion on because I already made a video on it, and I'll kind of like restate my general idea about this fight. But Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano got booked, and you know, I kind of talked about the fight already on the channel. I think it's a competitive fight, and even at their ages, I'm still pretty excited for it because they're big names. It's like a dream type of fight. In my opinion, there's a lot of people who are thinking about Rousey versus Carano as like, a fight that you should care about in the sense of like the 135 or 145 pound division. But I'm choosing to think about this fight as a legacy fight. It's a dream fight. You know, it's a fight that we should have gotten a long time ago, and I'm glad that we're getting it now before either of them are too old. Um, and yeah, it's just exciting to have something outside of the UFC. But that kind of brings me to the question that I wanted to ask you. And I know we've talked about this before too. I think if the UFC doesn't get Conor McGregor on the White House card, there's a real chance that Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano is the most viewed mixed martial arts fight of 2026, even in a world where the UFC basically has a monopoly over the entire MMA world. So that should say a lot about what Netflix is doing with this and what MVP is doing with this. So I guess that's my question for you. Do you think that this fight could be the most viewed of 2026? Just judging by who's in it, and obviously it being on Netflix is a massive deal for exposure.
Yeah, yeah, of course of course I do, but I think the way the conversation should more sway towards is if it is, perhaps when it is, and it's all said and done and all that, and people rewatch it and appreciate it more and more. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. Um, it's it's just it's a really kind of strange, precarious spot that puts the UFC that it puts the UFC, at least their women's fighters and divisions and the division, and whereas it's almost like if this promotion could do this instantly, then uh where's the premier fight for the women UFC fighters? And I
Especially
know
when
they
you know
got
that they tried, like Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano tried to get this fight booked in the UFC, and to no avail, apparently, the UFC. And there's been a problem lately. And I'm glad you kind of said that too, because this brings up an even bigger point. Like the UFC, for a company that just got a rights deal for $7.7 billion, not counting all of the other money they're making just around the world, they're not really willing to get out their checkbooks anymore, man. I mean, you could have had the Ronda Rousey comeback, but they didn't want to pay her. You could have gotten Rico Verhoeven from Glory, didn't want to pay him. And like it just doesn't seem like they want to shell out the money anymore for talent that's not directly under contract anymore, which I think it's part of why they're feeling so stale lately, man, because they're not really bringing in the new exciting talent, or I guess the old exciting talent in one sense with Ronda Rousey. But like it, especially when you kind of had the biggest women's fight of all time kind of, slip from your fingertips because of Harrison's injury. Um, it's tough to see a fight like Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano get booked outside of the UFC because you could argue that's the biggest women's fight of all time, even at their ages, just because, they're two pioneers of the sport. And again, like it's not like they're that old. Ronda Rousey's not even 40 yet. And, I think it's more on the Gina Carano side where people seem to be kind of giving this fight shit because it's like, how much of a B-side is Gina Carano? But I think that people will pull up to watch her too. I mean, she's another one who's famous anyway, even outside of MMA. She was in The Mandalorian. it's not like she's a nobody. It's an intriguing fight though. Like even the fight itself, this is like the other thing that I've been trying to tell people. I'm like, that's a fun fight. Like I'm genuinely curious what happens between Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano because this
You
fight's at
know how
145.
I look at it is is opponent like not opponents, but um just that fan base of MMA that uh doesn't care for the women's fights as it is, and so
And then
when
there's some
everyone's
who just hate
thinking,
Ronda as well. There are people who just hate Ronda, which is kind of fair because,
yeah,
she's talked a lot about the MMA fan base.
I think when people tune into this fight and uh if it delivers, then it's really depending on what the UFC because they already don't they already don't care that much about the women's fights in the division and whatnot and what happens. But after after this fight, um depending on how it goes and if it goes really well, a lot of fans are probably just gonna get their fill for women's MMA for like the year and they're just not gonna pay attention to any
That's the
more
one
women.
time they're not going to use the bathroom, is what you're saying? Because everybody,
Yeah, yeah,
anytime a big
this
women's
will be
fight's booked,
the
it's the piss
one
break.
bathroom, non-bathroom break.
Yeah, I hate that though, man. There's so many good fighters in the women's
Why?
divisions in the UFC. But this is a big one, man. I'm excited for it. Like I said, I let it simmer for a day before I made the video on it, and I still felt the same way. I still feel the same. Like it just gets me excited. This is a big fight that's not under the UFC banner. Two big names. And like I said, the fight itself, it's at 145. Gina Carano hits hard. Last two times we saw Ronda in the cage, she got knocked out brutally. So, but the thing is, if Ronda, all Ronda has to do is get her hands on Gina Carano. And I think that it's going to be a rough time for Gina because Ronda's ground game is like, I cannot tell people enough. It is levels above Gina Carano's. So, like, if Ronda can just get her to the ground, it's a safe bet to see that she'll probably submit her in a few minutes, if not quicker than that. So I think Gina's best bet is to keep this fight standing and to try and land some big shots and hope that Ronda's chin isn't the same as it was in the beginning of her career. It's a good fight, man. I think in Ronda's prime, Ronda would have won it handily, but you know, 10 years removed from Ronda's last fight, basically what, 17 years now removed from Gina's last fight, 16 I think, because I think it was late in 2009. Um, it's intriguing. I don't know what's going to happen in that fight, but we'll find out in May, that's for sure. Couple of boxing stories before we go here. One of which was Ryan Garcia getting the win over Mario Barrios to win the WBC welterweight title. I mean, dude, he looked absolutely fantastic in this fight. I mean, there's not even that much that I have to say. It seemed like Mario Barrios was ready for the left hook that Garcia is known for, but Garcia seemed prepared to land a lot more than that. I mean, he was landing so many good right hands down the pipe and obviously dropped them in the first round right off the bat. It was just a dominant performance for Garcia, much more dominant fight than you usually see in like a world title fight in boxing between two boxers who are that good. Um, and over a good opponent too. I mean, Barrios, he's had some questionable results lately. I mean, I think of that Manny Pacquiao fight because, I think a lot of people thought that Pacquiao won that fight and then it ended up being a draw and then he had another draw. So it's been a while since Barrios has gotten a win and he's still just been champion. And Ryan Garcia ended that in this fight pretty handily. But I don't know, man. What do you think of him? Like, I guess that's kind of my question because he's so good when he's like actually fully locked in, but it seems like sometimes his head is just completely out of the game. And those are the fights that he kind of tends to struggle in.
I think he's just a polarizing figure for sports in general. I think I think Ryan Garcia would be talked about even more if I mean I think I think now people are more or less just used to it and accustomed to who he is and the fighter, the boxer that he is. So um it's good. I think it's cool to see him win the belt, but it's just kind of yeah, I don't it probably doesn't go that much higher from here for him. So
Interesting. I mean, I can't say I disagree with you. I mean, for me, Ryan Garcia is the type of fighter, it's like which Ryan Garcia is showing up. Because, like, if we get this version of Ryan Garcia going forward in every fight, I mean, sky's the limit. But the thing is, it's hard to rely on Ryan Garcia to show up like that for every single fight. You know, he's had just multiple performances at this point, too, where he's just kind of been in a questionable headspace. And I don't know. I don't like that's what I'm saying. I don't really know what to ever really think of him because he's so talented, but I feel like there's more to be desired with him sometimes. But like I said, if he can continue looking the way that he looked against Barrios, it's fascinating. But outside of that though, one more story to get into for boxing before we go here. And another chapter has been added to this recent Eddie Hearn Dana White feud in the boxing world. And Connor Benn signs a one fight, eight-figure deal with Zuffa Boxing. And you got to wonder what the UFC fighters are thinking right now. With Connor Benn probably making 10 to 15 million dollars for one fight here for Zuffa. But they take him from Matchroom Boxing. Eddie Hearn was talking about how Connor Benn didn't even give him a chance to counter on a phone call, which I don't know. I didn't really like that move, honestly, because Matchroom kind of saved Connor Benn's career. And to kind of, slap Eddie Hearn in the face like that, I think, I don't know. I didn't really like that from Connor Benn, but he's a good fighter. I think the UFC, or I say the UFC, I think Zuffa will probably put him up against somebody who's, fight that he could win, but it'll uh it'll be interesting to see what happens with that because I'm curious if Connor Benn because this is like I said it's a one fight deal, so all things considered he could just fight this one fight and then go back to Matchroom for even more money, but you have to wonder now, did he burn his bridge with Eddie Hearn? So like let's say he doesn't go back to Zuffa. I don't know what other options you really have because like I mean Top Rank is kind of in the air right now. um Golden Boy, I don't even is Golden Boy even still really? I think they're probably still doing fights, right? I still hear Oscar talking. I mean, not dude. Boxing fans like have hated on us already. I think that's probably gonna piss some people off in the comments. But I don't know. Like, I just don't think that there's as many good options in the boxing world right now because Turkey Al Sheikh has really been making all of the biggest fights lately. And Eddie Hearn, he's been doing a really good job in the UK for the most part. So I don't know. I'm just intrigued to see kind of what happens in the future there with Connor Benn. But Zuffa Boxing, man, they're doing everything right so far. They're doing that slow climb. The events have been exciting so far. Jai Opetaya's first fight under the Zuffa banner is going to be Zuffa's next event. And now you have Connor Benn getting signed. They're doing all the right things. So I'm intrigued to kind of see where Zuffa is, another couple of years from now. That's for sure. But right now, you know, not a lot that you can really guess in terms of the future of Zuffa. I think that we're going to get a lot of surprises from them if we know Dana White the way that we think we do. But there's more UFC next week, man. UFC Mexico City. And dude, honestly, like I wonder if this kind of brings the real world into it a little more. But I wonder if all that stuff that's going on in Mexico with like the cartel is going to affect this card at all, because there's been like a big safety hazard in Mexico for like the past few days, ever since they captured that one guy from the one, I think he's the leader of one of the cartels down there. And you got like they're basically in military gear, just gunning down innocent civilians at this point in Mexico. It's like, and you haven't really heard anything from the UFC if they're, so I'm guessing all is still happening down there. But you have to wonder, like, if this stuff is still going on later in the week, I wonder if they're gonna have to move this fight card to like I don't even know, like Texas or something, or maybe even the Apex. Like I don't
Mm.
know. I'm just kind of curious about that. But either way, the card itself is kind of eh. I mean, I'm always happy to see Brandon Moreno fight, but against Kavanaugh, there's been better main events out there, but who knows? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen in the UFC. Maybe we'll get a nice upset, but I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see what happens with this card, with all that's been going on lately over there. But as long as the cartel doesn't stop the UFC from having this event, we'll be back in person next week to break it all down for you guys. So I don't know, Tiz, do you have any closing comments for anybody on this very snowy winter day here in New Jersey?
No, not really. You know what I mean? Just,
Not looking
yeah,
forward to shoveling.
no, no, I'm not.
You should just play one of our other videos, like just on YouTube, so that way they think you're still on the podcast, and then you can just lay down and do whatever you want to do, you know?
Yeah,
Just don't blame me if you
I,
get caught.
yeah.
I don't want smoke with Mrs. Ortiz. It's an option though. But all right, man,
Yeah,
I'll let you go. Good luck out there in the snow. I shoveled a lot this morning, and let me tell you, it's kind of light snow. It's a little airy, but then the areas where the plows uh got that snow building up. Good luck with that, man. That's all I got to say. But I'll let you go, man.
yeah.
It's been real fun time here on Zoom. It'll be good to see you again next week in person. But
All
hope you
right.
guys all enjoyed this. I really do. So, see y'all.
Feel just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, brand new dash up in a foreign car. It's the type of shit that you be doing when you going hard.